on Nova Legends podcast, I have Mount Vernon and Clemson legend Billy Davis, who played defensive back for Clemson on their 1981 championship team. What was it? Well, I guess that was 82, right? That was the
We're the 81 national champions, but January 1st, 1982 was the Orange Bowl.
that's right.
So, yeah.
In which he played for the great Danny Ford, big punt return in the championship game. Billy also was a member of the Mount Vernon 1979 state championship team basketball team. Later played for the St. Louis Cardinals with, among others, Neil Lomax and Otis Anderson. Uh, but no relation to the great Billy Davis Jr., lead singer of the
Nor
Clemson.
Maryland McCool. I get that a lot. No, I'm actually William Henry Davis Jr., but
Okay.
I go by Billy. But yeah, people ask me that a lot. They go, no, no,
Yeah.
not so much.
Billy
So
Davis,
anyway,
I love Billy Davis. They're still married to this day. That's great. Well, Billy, nice to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, I try to follow you. I'm not on Facebook
Uh,
or any social media based on my previous life as a Secret Service agent. I try to stay off of that.
oh, that's right.
But occasionally, I think everybody should do this as a security measure. Is Google your name because sometimes things get out there that are either incorrect or even salacious. So I just happened to Google my name a couple of weeks ago, and I saw the Facebook post that you had made about us winning the state championship in 1979, and a picture of myself and Junior Brown. And
Oh,
then I was scrolling down the comments, and I reached out to my friend Jam Flores, who you know that I played with at Mount Vernon, and told him, I said, hey, I really enjoy what Julian puts out there. And if he ever, has a chance to sit down and have a talk, I'd love to talk to him about it because my history in Northern Virginia athletics goes back to the 50s when my dad played football at Mount Vernon. And his head coach was Ed Henry,
yeah.
and his quarterback was Bob Hartage.
Hmm.
So it's pretty cool. That's how far back I go in Northern Virginia football history. So I have a lot of anecdotes and things that I could talk about, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball. So
What year was your father at Mount Vernon?
he was there in 1950, graduated in 53.
Did he know Red Jenkins? Who was there as well?
No, Coach Jenkins was he didn't. I think Coach Jenkins was after him. If I'm not, I don't know. I
Maybe
didn't ever
just
talk.
after it. I
Yeah,
think he was
maybe.
probably class of 55, but he moved in from West Virginia. So he may
Okay.
your dad may have been
Yeah.
gone by the time coach was there.
Where did
Um,
you go to high school?
I went to Robinson. I was class of 84.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I saw you guys play. I think your senior year you played at Robinson, and
Yeah.
we had a
Yeah.
running back named Slick Bailey. You may remember Slick Bailey. He was a
Yep. No, Robinson was loaded because we played them in the regional championship game at Robinson. And the ironic thing was, or the cool story on that is we played Annandale, who were the year before were the state champions and national champions, 1978, right? And then we played them with Mark Cox was their quarterback. In '79, it's Jeb Stewart, but the head coach at Annandale was Bob Hartage. And then the head coach at Robinson was Ed Henry. So my dad's life came full circle where we played his quarterback and his head coach for basically the region championship in 1979. Yeah,
Yeah. Bob Hart is just his funeral is coming up. Like, he just passed recently. I know
he did.
his daughter Kim went to Robinson. Coach Henry was one of my neighbors. I was his paper boy. See, all the teachers and coaches from the area, they went to Robinson. Their kids went to Robinson, even though they may have still coached at whatever school they're going to. What neighborhood did your dad grow up in Mount Vernon?
My folks, both my mom and dad, grew up in Fort Hunt.
Fort
My
Hunt.
mom grew up on Fort Hunt Road, right by the old fire station, and my dad actually grew up on the then Army base, which is a whole different avenue I could go down. It was a top secret U.S. Army base in World War II. That's where they kept German
Yeah, I
POWs.
was going to say I heard about that.
And my dad used to tell stories all the time of yeah, because his buddy Julian, his dad was the CO of Fort Hunt, and he would go over and play with the German POWs.
Wow.
And play soldier with him and then make kites for him. And I used to think my dad was like, he's out of his mind. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then one day, I don't know, about 15 years ago, there was an article that came out in the Washington Post and it talked about this secret base in Fort Hunt. And yeah, my dad was, yeah. So they grew up in Fort Hunt. They would have gone to Fort Hunt High School had it existed. But back then, you, if I'm not mistaken, you had Mount Vernon, Fairfax, and Herndon. Those were the only public schools in Fairfax County. Then you had GW in Alexandria and Washington and Lee in Arlington, and that was it. So they would have to go. They would play GW Danville as part of their regular season schedule because there was just not that many high schools in Virginia.
That's crazy. That's right.
Yeah.
I interviewed Pat Toomey, who you probably know, played an Edison legend, played for the
Yes.
Cowboys. And it's funny because when I interviewed him, he played against Danny Ford at the mythical game when Vanderbilt beat Alabama.
Mm,
He played against Danny Ford. But anyway, Pat Toomey reminded me that when he went to Edison, it was like a country school almost. They were when they played, they would play Washington Lee at the time, and then some other city schools. I think Stewart might have been built around there as well. But those
yeah.
schools were bigger. They had bigger populations. They were more urban, and Edison was in the suburbs, which
Oh
it's just
well, that's true, Julian. As a matter of fact, my folks, my dad passed away 5 years ago, but my mom lives with us now. She's 91, and she was captain of the cheerleaders with a woman by the name of Roberta Locke, who became Roberta Henry. So my mom was captain of the cheerleaders with who later became Mrs. Henry. But they Mount Vernon at the time they called them the Farm Boys. And as you know, Mount Vernon is only about 9 miles outside of Alexandria, but it
yeah.
was considered country at the time. And then as the region grew, when I was playing at Mount Vernon in the late 70s, we were part of the Gunston district, as you remember. And we had Mount Vernon, Fort Hunt, Groveton, Hayfield, Edison, Robert E. Lee, and I think that was West Springfield. They
Yeah,
were all in the old Gunston district.
yeah.
And then, of course, Fort Hunt burned down my junior year at Mount Vernon. And then they ended up eventually combining Fort Hunt and Groveton, which became as known as West Potomac.
It must have burned down twice because it also burned down when I was in school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
it did because I distinctly remember because it what happened was there were this is a great story. We were playing Fort Hunt. The school burned down. I don't know. It was one weekend, and the following Friday, we were playing Fort Hunt in basketball at Mount Vernon. And this is my junior year. This is the year we won the state championship. And so we're in our locker room on one end of the hallway, and Fort Hunt's locker room is on the other end of the hallway. So we come out, Junior Brown's leading us down the hallway. We're going out for warm-ups. And as we pass the Fort Hunt locker room, Fairfax County Police have a Fort Hunt basketball player in handcuffs
mm,
in his warm-up. And we're like, oh man! And they walk him out through our field house. I'm sure you've been in Mount Vernon Field, in front of the whole crowd. Walked him out, and then took him down to the substation. And years later, I was on the Presidential Protective Division at the White House, and my boss he was a Fairfax County police officer. His name was Donnie Flynn. He's since passed away. He was the investigating detective in that case. And he told me, he goes, we did that all on purpose so the community could see that we had arrested the perpetrators.
jeez.
Isn't that crazy? Oh, I got more stories than I have anything else at time. I was like, it's unbelievable. He said that really did happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, they threw Molotov cocktails into the principal's office, and then the fire got up into the structure of the roof, and
Mm.
so the Fort Hunt kids went to Groveton for the first half of the first 9 weeks of the spring semester. Then they went to Mount Vernon for the second 9 weeks of the spring semester. So we would go to school from 8 to noon, and then they would go to school from 1 to 5. And then it was great as a baseball player. We had the whole afternoon off to practice baseball. So
Yeah, I interviewed TJ Quinn, ESPN investigative reporter, he was there when Fort Hunt closed, and then he went
okay,
to West Potomac for his senior year. But he was 85 or 86. I think he's a year younger than me. So
okay,
they must have had another fire. He had some bad luck.
maybe.
So look, that area is a little bit complicated to me because, as it integrated, first we had a lot of black kids going to Groveton. I guess was it Quanda Road or whatever that area. Uh,
Yeah, it's
but
Gum Springs, that whole area.
Gulf Spring,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But some of the neighborhoods went to Mount Vernon, some went to Fort Hunt, and then most went to Groveton. What are your recollections growing up of the race relations in the area?
That's a great question. I mean, when I went to Washington Mill Elementary, we had one black kid in our school, it was Mitch Ryan. So
Basketball player.
yeah, and played football at. I'm trying to think where he played football in college. Mitch was on the basketball team and the football team. Great guy. And then I went to Walt Whitman Intermediate Junior High School, and they bust kids in. That was in the '70s, and then Mount Vernon. We were a pretty good mix, but back then Mount was just white kids and black kids,
Right.
and that's all we didn't there was no big, it was just Groveton, a little bit more. Fort Hunt was, we were like the middle, and then Groveton was a little lower, and then Fort Hunt was kind of the upper class, the rich kids that lived on the river, kind of.
Yeah.
But they had a great mix of kids too.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had my junior year at Mount Vernon, we were 9-0. We went to Fort Hunt, and back then, as you know, if you didn't win the district, you weren't going to the playoffs,
Man, that was tough.
right? I mean, we were 9-0. We beat TC Williams like 44-0 at TC. We were loaded. We go to Fort Hunt. Unfortunately, they had a guy by the name of Rocky Belk, who was their tailback,
He
who
was
was
great.
a literally Olympic sprinter. Third play from scrimmage, he broke it up the middle. He went by me like a bullet, and we ended up losing like 38 to something, and we were done. We went
Yeah.
Our season was over, and we were 9-1.
Yeah.
And they had Mark Mile and Rocky Belk in their
Yeah.
backfield. They were loaded. Uh,
So,
so
so do you remember the politics of the day? So you were coming of age during Watergate. The Vietnam War was ending, and then
yep.
later on, when you're in high school, the Iran crisis. Do you remember the politics of the day? Did it have a profound influence on you?
Well, that's one of the reasons growing up in the area that we did, whether it was in Fairfax where you grew up or Mount Vernon where I grew up, you were around people that work for the government,
Mhm.
or they're in a predominance of military folks who work at the Pentagon, or they work at Andrews Air Force Base, Joint Base Andrews, whatever it was. And so I was always affected by it a little bit more just because I was a kid very much in history. If I hadn't, my goal in high school was to find a place to go to school, and then I was either going to play in the NFL or play Major League Baseball till I was too old to play anymore. Now obviously that didn't happen,
Yeah.
but I was one of those kids that they had pigs. I thought thought I was going to go to West Point or Annapolis because I was a good student, never got in any trouble, obviously a good athlete, and I fit the mold of what they were looking for. So yeah, I always paid attention to things like Watergate and to things like the Iran, crisis back then, which has now reared its ugly head again. Um, that's one of the reasons Julie and I got into the Secret Service after I exhausted all my playing options and where I was going to go because I just still wanted to serve the country. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Oh,
So
of course.
that's why I was in the Secret Service for 27 years, and then did contract work for the CIA for another year before I got into my current occupation. So
Did you
I don't see how anybody couldn't be, as where we live and where we grew up. I don't see how anybody couldn't be affected by politics as opposed to growing up in San Antonio, Texas, or Jacksonville, Florida, or Sacramento, California. When you're in this environment,
yeah.
that's what you get.
Were you a Redskins fan?
Huge. I can tell you, probably tell you the starting lineup right now of the 1972 Super Bowl team. Because back then, as you probably remember, those games they were blacked out, right? You couldn't watch a Redskin game within a 100-mile radius of Washington. It was blacked out. So you want to go to watch a Redskin game, you had to drive to Richmond basically to watch it. So you had to listen to it on the radio. So I listened to every Redskin game, home game, in my parents' dining room, lying on the floor in a pillow with a little transistor radio, listening to the Redskins.
Mm.
Yeah. And then all those years later, when I came back, when I got picked up by the Cardinals at the end of the '84 season, uh, got there. I could tell stories like that for the next 3 days, but Uh, Played against the Giants. Didn't I suited up? Didn't get on the field. Then the next week we're playing the Washington Redskins in RFK Stadium for the NFC East Championship.
Mm.
And I'll never forget coming home, and we stayed at the Crystal City Marriott, which I'm sure you know where that is.
Yeah, my senior prom there.
There you go.
Mhm.
So that's where we stayed, right? And we'd had no formal team dinner that night. We had a team meeting at I think it was 8. And so we were free to go whatever you wanted to do. So my dad drove up from Mount Vernon, which is, 20 minutes, picked me up. I went home and had dinner at my parents' house.
Oh, cool.
My dad drove me back, and we we walk into the lobby of the Crystal City Marriott, and CBS they were interviewing the real dudes like Neil and OJ and EJ Jr., Bubba Baker. We had some dudes. And we walked in, and the lights are on for the cameras, and who's sitting there but Pat Summerall and John Madden.
Oh, so cool.
And I looked at my dad. He just like this look on his face. I said, "Hey, this is the big time. This is welcome to the." So the next day we get out, and I'm like a little kid on Christmas. So get on the buses, and we drive across the bridges, and we pull in. We're driving through the parking lots there at RFK. And people are screaming at us and flipping us off. And I thought to myself, "Man, that was me like 5, 6 years ago."
Yeah.
So got in the locker room, dressed as quick as I could, go out, warm up, and I come out of the dugout, and the old RFK where the visiting team came out of the dugout on the other end, and you had the big Washington Post sign at the far end where the Redskin band was.
I think,
So I walk out into the end zone, and I look, and there's number 7, Joe Theismann, holding extra points and field goals for number 3, Mark Mosley.
mm,
Two dudes that I idolized not 5 years ago when I was in, junior high school or high school, right? And then I turned to look at the end zone by the pylons. There was Frank Herzog, Sonny Jurgensen, and Sam Huff, the radio broadcast team.
yeah.
And both Sam lived in Fort Hunt, and Sonny actually lived in Mount Vernon.
Mm.
Sam actually spoke at my 8th grade Little League football banquet. And I so bad wanted to go over and just shake their hand because I was like, those are my guys, but I couldn't because it was like, hey, you're a pro now. You can't be, it's time to do your job, which is a weird feeling. So I jogged down, and my dad, a DC police officer, let my dad down in the end zone. Uh, and so I ran down. There's my dad. He's standing in the far end zone in the corner. And I ran down, and he goes, I said, how did you get down? And he goes, hey. And so the police officer was smiling. He's looking at me. He goes, I just told him you went to Mount Vernon and you're playing. So I got to spend that, I don't know, probably like 30 seconds with my dad in the end zone. I wish somebody had a camera, but when I had a phone back then, it was so I never got a picture of it. But he looked at me and says, well, you ready? And I go, yeah, I guess so. It's time to go. And
Wow.
then we ended up losing that game 29-27. We missed a 50-yard field goal with 6 seconds left, went wide left, and the Redskins won the NFC East. If we had hit that field goal, we'd have won the NFC East and then gone to the playoffs. But we finished in a 3-way tie with Dallas and New York for second place.
Mm.
Flew home to St. Louis, packed up my stuff, and I was back. My mom picked me up at National Airport at like 3 o'clock the next day, and it was like I was in some kind of weird dream,
Wow.
you know, just
Wow.
crazy.
I
So
can only,
that was first Redskin game I ever got to because we didn't have. My dad was a mailman and he worked in a grocery store, so we couldn't afford tickets. So that was the first Redskin game I ever went to. I played in.
yeah, that's cool. I think I went to maybe one or two, not many, and
Yeah,
it was like magic to be there. Who was your favorite Redskin growing up?
Charlie Taylor.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, yeah, he was. I played against his son, I believe, in Little League football. Such a class act. I went to summer camp every year. It was called Camp of Champions, and then it was called the Players Association camp that they had, and all the
Okay.
Redskins were there. Mike Thomas and Terry Hermeling, and all those guys. It was great.
I'll tell you, they'll always good. I have to say too that um when they brought me in St. Louis, they brought me in as I signed with Denver out of Clemson as an undrafted free agent. I thought I was going to get drafted. I didn't. That's another story for another day.
Mm,
But I got cut. I got picked up by the Cardinals, but I had sprained my ankle playing basketball down at Lorton Elementary, and I flunked the physical, so they couldn't sign me. They brought me in as a safety. When they bring me in at the end of the year of the '84 season, unbeknownst to me, I meet with Jim Hannafin, was our head coach, and Larry Wilson, who was one of my idols growing up.
Legend. Safety.
Yeah,
Number
yeah.
eight. Number eight.
Number eight, no, I invented the safety blitz, and here I am in with Larry and Coach Hannafin, and we're making a playoff stretch run. We want you to blah blah blah, and I'm yes sir, yes sir. I'll do anything I can to help the team. Go down and get your equipment. We had team meeting tomorrow at 8. This was a Tuesday, so I go down. I get with the equipment manager, this guy by the name of Bill Simmons, who when I was growing up, my mom had bought me this picture book, and it was a day in the life of the NFL,
Mm,
and it was followed an NFL team from the time they woke up on Sunday until the time the game was over,
mm,
and it was the St. Louis Cardinals
yeah.
of all teams. And so this guy's name is Bill Simmons, and he's the equipment manager. He's got a buzz haircut, black glasses, and I used to look at that book all the time and imagine that was me. And now all of a sudden it is me. And
Mm,
so I go down and I walk in the equipment room, and who's there? It's Bill Simmons. I go,
mm,
"You're Bill Simmons." He goes, "How in the world would you know that?" I explained it to him.
mm,
So anyway, get the shoulder pads, get the pants, get the helmet, all strapped on. He goes, "It's time to pick out a number, kid." And I go, "Okay." Well, I said, I was 24 in college, I was 24 in high school. I said, I was 41 the last time you guys had me. He says, "You're looking in the wrong section, kid." I said, he said, "They have you down as a linebacker." And I'm like, I hadn't played linebacker since fourth grade. He goes, "Hold on a second." He goes over to the phone on the wall. He goes, "Yeah, I got Davis down here. It says he's a safety." "Yeah, got it." He goes, "You're a linebacker, kid." So I looked in the 50s. I immediately went to 55 because
mm,
of Chris Hamburger.
yeah.
It's the only reason I picked it because of Chris Hamburger was number 55. So to backtrack, Charlie Taylor and Chris Hamburger were my two dudes that and Larry Brown. Those guys were, you know, Charlie was number 42, Larry was number 43, Chris Hamburger was number 55, Billy Kilmer was number 17, Sonny Jurgens was number 9. You go right down the list. Len Hoss was number 53, you know, whatever. It's so that's how embedded the Redskins were, just like all of us back in those days. Yeah.
I happened to sit next to John Riggins at a wedding a few months ago, and he couldn't believe I knew all the Redskins from the '70s. I'm like, well, that was everything
That was it.
when I
That
was
was
a
it.
kid. So,
That's what
go ahead.
no, I read somewhere where when you're a sports fan, when you're between the ages of basically 8 and 12, that's when you're most impressionable. And that's where you really fall in love with the team or a program, especially, in the NFL or Major League Baseball or NBA, something like that. So that's holds true. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, and then I mean, just you mentioned this earlier. We didn't have the access to the games like as much as we do now. So I remember like when they every year the team would put out their highlight film for the year, like a 30-minute film, and we'd watch it over and over again because it's just so amazing to be able to watch all these games at once because we just didn't have the
No,
access. We didn't
I
have
still have
access.
the '84 highlight film from St. Louis. I have it on VHS and DVD, and I still watch it occasionally because it brings back, it was 42 years ago, but it brings back such great memories of, and in all transparency, I was disappointed, and so a lot of folks thought I was going to go on and play 10 years, and I didn't. And so you live with that for a long time. And then as you get older and you become more mature, you realize how blessed you were and how lucky you were just to have the opportunity to be there. Like when we lost to the Redskins, I shook one guy's hand after the game because I just wanted to be able to shake his hand. And you know who it was? It was John Riggins.
Yeah. Oh, he's such a nice
Yeah,
guy.
yeah. I walked up and I go, hey, great game, John. He goes, he doesn't know. I was absolutely nobody. I might as well have been holding the sideline markers. He's
He,
like, thanks, kid. Appreciate it. And I'm like, that was so cool.
he just
So you
has.
go from being a guy, yeah, because that was the guy I grew up, basically worshiping as a kid.
Were you also a Bullets fan?
Bullets fan used to go over to the old Cap Center I remember, never forget when they won their one and only NBA championship with Elvin Hayes and Kevin Greavy and oh yeah, oh yeah,
Who's your
Wes Unseld.
who's your favorite? Who's your favorite Bullet?
Um, you'd have you'd have to go probably with well, Wes Unseld was always like the man. He was like the enforcer. Uh Elvin Hayes back in the day, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Were you an Orioles fan also?
I never could get into the Orioles because I grew up as a Senators fan.
Right. So you were Expos fan, or were you just,
No, I just never.
yeah.
Once the Senators left,
Mm.
and I kind of followed the Orioles because the Orioles had followed me through. The Orioles had followed me through high school and then at Clemson because, as you know, I played baseball there, and for only 1 year, I got kind of snookered. That's another story for another day. He told me I could. Then it was no, you got to go through spring practice. No, you got to go through spring practice. But ironically enough, when I got cut from the Cardinals the first time, my high school baseball coach, Mike Folio, God rest his soul, he's like a grandfather to me. His brother Mo was connected to the Orioles organization. And then I was actually supposed to go to spring training with the Orioles in the spring of 1985 as a non-roster invitee. And as fate would have it, I got picked up by the Cardinals in December of '84. So now I'm a professional football player, and I'm under contract. And they were like, they couldn't believe I wasn't going to go to spring training with the Orioles, and I'm like, I got to go to mini camp. I mean, I got to get ready to make the squad. And I wasn't Bo Jackson and I wasn't Deion Sanders. I was just a guy, I was a guy right on the edge of everything. Right. And so I had to realize it's time to fish and not cut bait. So,
But I still think, I mean, Dion and Bo were exceptional cases, but I think it was very typical for your day for athletes, the best athletes to play baseball, football, and basketball. And baseball was a sport that, a good athlete could play well if they just focused on it for a while. Do you think if you would have played sports today, you would have been a three-sport athlete? Or you think, like most kids, one or two max?
if I had to do it all over again, I think I would have just, because basketball to me, I love playing hoops. And, Gordon Hill was our basketball coach at Mount Vernon before Don McCool.
Mm.
And he came to my parents' house between eighth grade and my freshman year. Just cold call, knocked on the door at my parents' house at 8900 Valley Forge Drive. And I said, Coach Hill, come in. And we knew who he was. That's the head basketball coach in Mount Vernon. And he sat down and he tried to convince my mom and dad that if I only played basketball, that by the time I got to be a senior at Mount Vernon, I'd be an All American and I could go anywhere I wanted to go. And my mom looked at him and said, Coach Hill, Billy just plays basketball to have something to do between football and baseball.
Yeah.
So, and I had great memories from playing, and I went back and forth from the JV team my sophomore year, back and forth, back and forth. And then my junior year, I started a few games. Ironically, I started against Groveton
Very,
because they had a guy named Keith Wilder who was just like unstoppable, and Gary Ford.
very forward.
And when we won the state championship that year, Julian, we lost 3 games that year. We lost 3 games to Groveton. So Groveton was actually the Gunston District champions.
Yeah.
We had 2 teams go to the Northern Region Championship. It was Mount Vernon and Groveton from the Gunston. Groveton got knocked out in the regionals. We ended up winning the regional and winning the state championship. But the Groveton Tigers were actually the Gunston District champions that year. So they beat us 3 times.
I mean,
How about
that district was so tough because Fort Hunt had some good teams, and they never had a chance.
no?
It's just so many. Why was Don McCool such a great coach in your eyes?
Just a great tactician, motivator, knew how to get in everybody's head. It is a great example, Julie. So we lose to Fort Hunt in football, right? So I'm devastated, and I go home and turn on the radio in my bedroom, and Queen's playing "We Are the Champions."
Mhm.
I'm crying. I'm literally tears coming down. But it's the end of my world as far as I know it because and I played my junior year. I broke my ankle in a scrimmage at Stafford High School, first scrimmage of the year. My dad took me to Mount Vernon Hospital, ER room. Doctor said, I can't cast it now. You've got a fracture here, bone chips. You're going to have to come back, see an orthopedic guy to put a cast on it in 10 days. And I went out. My dad said, because this is old school, right? Dad didn't go in. He was like, hey, you're going in. I'll wait for you. They rolled me back out. He said, what did they say? I said, I'll be all right in a week or two. Lied. It was a must lie situation. So ended up playing my whole junior year with a fractured ankle, just taped up. Anyway, so we lose to Fort Hunt. So I go to school that Monday, and Coach McCool sees me in the hallway. He goes, Bill. He never called me Billy. He always called me Bill. Come here. I'm like, hey, Coach. He goes, you gonna be practice today, right? And I go, Coach, I'm gonna need a day or two off just to kind of soak this in. I'm just exhausted and I'm mentally drained, and I don't. He goes, well, yeah, I understand. He goes, why don't you just come on by practice and and just see what we're doing? Okay, so I kind of saunter into the gym, and he goes, hey, Bill, come on over. He goes, hey, I got your practice uniform in your locker over there. Why don't you just instead of standing around here in street clothes, why don't you? Next thing I know, I'm full speed going through drills, and you know, he Coach McCool, he went to his funeral and he passed away. I don't know 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah. Hmm.
now. But we were all there. Most of the guys from the state championship team, but just that he was a coach that he seemed like he was always having a great time coaching basketball. He just thoroughly enjoyed the game. I firmly believe he could have been a great coach at the next level if he'd have gone to like Mason or a school, like that, or American, and I think he really would have done well because he just knew the game in and out, and just loved the game so much. He was just
He's,
he. This is my favorite story, state championship game, because like I said, I started a few games, but I was literally the sixth man or the seventh man on the squad, and didn't play that many people. Starting lineup was Daryl Williams, and Daryl would be a great interview for you. I don't know if you remember Daryl.
yeah, General Williams.
Yeah, yeah, the first African American superintendent of West Point.
Yeah.
Yeah, fairly successful guy.
Yeah.
So, but he was our starting center, and Daryl looked like a grown man when he was like, he's just a dude. Daryl Wainwright, Eric Sellers, Timmy McDonald, Junior Brown, uh,
You see Derek Still?
Derek Steele, of course. Derek went on to play at JMU,
Mhm.
uh, and ended up being the head basketball coach at Mount Vernon. He was a great running back. Probably could have played tailback at JMU too if you wanted to. Anyway,
He's a good, very good coach too.
so yeah, and so I think Sellers got in foul trouble. This is like the third quarter of the state championship game against Maury, and I'm sitting on the bench, and I just want to get in because I'm a player. This is a championship game, and I want to get in. I want out there. And so, coach, I'll never. Coach said, he goes, "This is when I knew you were different." He's, "Oh, I knew you were different, but this is when I knew you were different." I came walking. He says, "I walked down the bench, and he said you were the only guy that was looking at me. Everyone else had their head down, staring at the floor. They wanted no parts of it." And I was looking at him like, going, "Yeah, put me in." And so I went in, didn't score a point, think I got a rebound, but
Yeah. Do you remember
it,
that
it,
Woodson? So I've interviewed Red, and Red is still unhappy about the Woodson regional final game. He feels like Woodson was done wrong. Do you remember that game at all?
you know what? I don't remember the specifics of it, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
The only thing I really even remember about the regional finals is our first game was against Langley, and we were up 28-0 before they scored a bucket.
Wow. That's the semifinal?
No,
Uh,
that was the
First round.
first game in the regions,
Yeah.
whatever that was, quarterfinal, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't remember. But what did Coach Jenkins say about that? There was
Uh,
some
I
kind of
had to go back.
controversy.
He felt the referees had a cozy relationship with Coach McCool, and he still remembers Coach Jenkins has a great mind for detail in his 80s. So you're talking about going to state, and you guys upset a great Petersburg team
Petersburg.
who had Mark West, future NFL NBA player, and many years in the NBA. And you had a they had a legendary forward named Stiff, Darrell Stiff.
Uh-huh.
But you guys had to hold the ball
It
against
was
them.
48-44 to slow down. We actually practiced that week with the scout team, the second teamers. They had tennis rackets, and we practiced moving the ball around, and they would come at us with tennis rackets. So we had to practice shooting over,
Wow, that's
because
smart.
everybody, Petersburg was huge.
Yeah,
I was the tallest guy on our team, and I was 6'3". That was one of two guys that could dunk.
yeah.
That was it. That was two guys. No one else could do it. It was me and Jay Major. and Jay didn't play a whole lot. It was just me and Jay. I was the only guy. We were the only two dudes that could dunk. In Petersburg, there was like a flying circus, and they were like 6'9", 6'8", 6'5", 6. So Coach McCool got out tennis rackets and had the guys. So we would have to practice shooting. Oh yeah, and so but I didn't. I never. I didn't play one minute of that game. It was basically our guards. It was Derek and Junior ran the show, and it was typical. Coach McCool up a red card, and they would sit there and hold the ball, and he put up a green card, and that would mean go, and that's how we pulled that off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he gave that same delay game to Hayfield like 10 years, 7 years later. Other Northern Virginia teams have used it when they've
Oh yeah.
won the state.
Well,
Yeah,
the I got a great story about that Maury game though. So I go to the Vice Presidential Protective Division. This is 2012. And I'm the deputy special agent in charge. You have special agent in charge and every deputy. So I come over from a counter assault team program, which is our counter-terrorist unit, which I either was an operator, team leader, or I was the program manager for better part of 10 years. Our tactical unit, which is the top 0.2% of Secret Service agents. And anyway, come off of that, go to the VP, and they said, "Hey, sir, the vice president's going to Norfolk uh, on Tuesday or Wednesday to go to a high school to give a campaign speech." And I'm like, okay. Why don't you just go down there, jump on the car plane at JBA, fly to NAS Norfolk, and then we'll pick you up and you can do the walkthroughs and see how it goes. I said, okay. So I fly down on the car plane. They pick us up and they're taking me to the high school. And I said, well, what high school are we going to here in Norfolk? And they go, we're going to Maury. And I go, and then I turned into Al Bundy. I'm like, you know, you're not going to believe this,
yeah.
but when I was a junior at Mount Vernon High School, we played Maury of Norfolk in the state championship, and we won it. And can you believe that? And they're like, yeah, that's a great story, sir. So I go in, and you walk around. He's giving his speech in the gym. So I look up in the raft, on the walls, and it says 1979 Eastern Region Champions. And I look at my guys and, hey, you know what? You know where the state championship banner is, right? It's in Mount Vernon. It says, they're like, so, so he comes in the next day. We motorcade to the high school. He gives his speech. He's working a rope line left to right, and he's working it back right to left. And I'm kind of standing back, just watching how everything operates and what their procedures and protocols are. And there's this group of young black kids that are kind of mirroring him around, and that's natural because it's the vice president of the United States. So one of the kids walks up and he goes to one of the agents. I can see him talking, and the agent turns around and he points at me, and I can see him go, "You need to talk to this guy." So I walk over. I said, "Yes, son, can I help you?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You guys can't make it up." He goes, "You guys got a basketball team?" And I said, no. I said, we used to have a basketball team. We traveled playing DC and charity and stuff when I was in the president's detail. I said, but we don't have one anymore. He goes, well, it's a good thing. I said, why is that? He goes, because if you did, this kid's like 16. He goes, we'd run your asses off the court. And I went, son, come here. And I put my arm around him and I said, do you see that banner up there on the wall? The one that says 1979 Eastern Region Champions? He goes, yeah. I said, do you know why it doesn't say 1979 state champions? He goes, no. I said, because my Mount Vernon Majors ran your all's asses off the court
Yeah.
in 1979. And the kids around him are like, oh. And so the vice president's staff, they were like, that's the most incredible story. I said, what are the chances of a guy, one of 12 dudes that were on that team, that's with the vice president of the United States in the gym, and this young man decides to come to me and ask me about that? It was incredible. It was great, great story.
My,
I
my,
tell that
my,
one all.
my father-in-law. My father-in-law went to Maury, and my mother-in-law went to Mount Vernon. So my family's on both sides of that.
That's great.
Yeah. So you played for Bruce Patrick at Mount Vernon, right?
Yeah, I sure
Yeah.
did.
So
My senior year.
okay. Yeah. So who was the coach before Bruce Patrick?
Well, I played freshman football for Bruce and Ken Gaudreau, and then um, Waverly Brooks came in from UVA
Mm-hmm.
my sophomore year. Now, Mount Vernon hadn't won anything in about 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
We were one of the doormats of the Gunston. Dave Grove was the head coach at Mount Vernon my freshman year. I played freshman football. Uh, One of the great stories we scrimmaged from Coach Patrick. I gave the eulogy at his funeral a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
Bruce was one of my mentors. I would talk to him once a month my whole life. And so when he died, his wife Paul asked me to do the eulogy. Of course, I did. But we scrimmaged at West Springfield, and I had two runs for touchdown. One was like 75, one was for 80. Picked off another pass return for a touchdown. And he went back that night to the varsity coaches and he said, "I got a kid on the freshman football team that's going to play in the NFL one day."
Mhm.
And they're like, "Oh, you can't. There's no way. Is a fresh kid play freshman football?" He goes, "No, I'm telling you, he's going to play in the NFL one day." Well, then when the Cardinals picked me up and I actually made the active roster, the first person to call my mom was Bruce Patrick to
Mhm.
tell him, I told you he was going to make it. I told you he was going to be in the NFL, and we're going to retire his jersey." And so Coach moved up with us. He was the offensive line coach when Coach Brooks came in. And then my sophomore year at Mount Vernon, we won the Gunston District, and we ended up losing to Robinson 12-10 in the regional semifinals at Hayfield. And then Coach Brooks was the head coach when we went 9-1, lost to Fort Hunt. Then he left to go to Marshall with Sonny Randall. Sonny was the head coach. Sonny was at UVA at one time.
Marshall College, not high school, right?
Yeah, Marshall University. Yeah,
University.
Thundering Herd. Yep.
Mhm.
And so Coach Brooks went to coach with Coach Randall at Marshall University, and then Bruce became the head coach in 1979. And we won the region that year, and then they won the state championship in '83 with
Right.
Johnny Remeshevsky and Sean Scott, that whole crew.
What made Coach Patrick so special?
Uh, I just said at the eulogy, he believed in everybody's potential, was super positive. It just, he was just one of those guys you walk in the room and he can make anybody feel good about themselves. It was just, and even like when our youngest daughter was a swimmer. She was all met, all state, NISCA All American. She swam at the Madeira School in McLean, won state championships, multiple state championships, swam full academic athletic scholarship to Kentucky. She graduated in 24. She swam with a girl named Riley Gaines. I don't know if you knew Riley. Oh, yeah. She's
Was that
teammates. Riley's
Rowdy Gaines' sister?
no relation whatsoever. But she and Riley were teammates
Oh,
at
cool.
Kentucky. And he would always say, she's a Davis just like you are, and she's a champion, and she's going to be a champion, and we're so proud of her. Up until the days where he started to fade because he had onset of dementia. That's what brought on his untimely death. But yeah, he was one of those dudes, always believed anything was possible, never had a bad day. And I think that's what separated him from the other guys that could have possibly been the head coach or other candidates there at Mount Vernon. But we called him the Bear back in the day.
I think you mentioned that you guys lost to Fort Hunt that kept you out of playoffs. Was that your
Yep.
junior? Is that your junior
Yep.
year? Okay.
Yep.
Well, how far did you get your senior year?
We won the region. We beat Annandale at Stewart in the regional semifinal, and then we beat Robinson at Robinson for the region championship, 1979. Then we went
1970.
down and lost to Patrick Henry of Roanoke in the state semifinals.
Who was on that team?
Patrick Henry Roanoke or the Mount Vernon? I couldn't tell you. I
Oh,
have no
yeah, okay.
idea.
Okay.
Now the problem with that was I tore my back up about 6 games into my senior year. So truth be told, I would get shot up with xylocaine the
Mhm.
last half of my senior year. They'd bring me in. And Brian Taylor was our wrestling coach, and like most wrestling coaches, he was kind of out of his mind. So our trainer was a lady by the name of Marianne Mashke, and she refused to do it. So Brian would do it. So they'd bring some of the guys in. I'd lie on the table in the training room, and they'd shoot me up with xylocaine just so I could play. And
Wow.
then I really tore it up. First series, we're down in Roanoke playing at I think it was called City Stadium or something.
Yeah, a beautiful stadium.
Right, right. And so I played both. I never came off. I came off the field my senior year. This is being shot up. The only thing I didn't do was play on the punt team. I returned punts, returned kickoffs, held for extra points and field goals, played safety, and played wide receiver. So the first series we go out, I just run a quick slant pattern. The ball is thrown over my head. I go up with one hand to get it, and the offside linebacker had come over, lowered his head, hit me right in the stomach. I roll over, puke breakfast up all over the place. This dude gets up, falls over. He'd actually fractured his neck.
Mm.
Uh, but I was never the same after. I mean, I only made it to halftime. I just couldn't. I couldn't walk, and so we ended up losing 13-7. I think the longest run from scrimmage against us that year before I got hurt was 20 yards, and Patrick Henry broke a run for 70 yards. If I'd have been in there, it
Mm.
wouldn't have happened,
Mm.
and we probably would have at least gone. But I think Petersburg ended up winning it that year, and they had Ricky Hundley.
Wow.
Um,
So cool.
yeah, so
Why'd you choose Clemson?
fell in love with it. Just it was really between Clemson and Notre Dame, uh, and I just honestly couldn't make up my mind. But Clemson recruited me harder. Um, my recruiting coach at Clemson was a guy named Lawson Holland, who played at Clemson. My recruiting coach at Notre Dame was a guy named Gene Smith, who ended up being the athletic director at Ohio State. Great guy. I just and I wanted to play baseball as well. And back in the day, Clemson was much more known as a baseball school than Notre Dame was. But there was just something about the comfort level and when I got down there and they made me feel at home. And if you've ever been to Clemson, I don't know if you ever have.
Never have, no. I
Yeah,
heard
I would.
it's very isolated. At least
It's
it used
very
to be.
nice. It's the quintessential college town.
Mhm.
Uh, if you've never, and people go, why in the world would you go to Clemson? Why would you go there with Notre Dame or Penn State? Because my final schools were Clemson and Notre Dame, North Carolina, Penn State, and Alabama.
Mm.
So I mean, I got recruited by Bear Bryant, Joe Paterno. They were all at my house.
Mm.
So Dick Crum was the head coach at the Real Carolina, as we say in Clemson, and then of course Dan Devine was the head coach at Notre Dame and Danny Ford. So I went to Clemson, went to North Carolina, then I went to Clemson, then the next week I went to Notre Dame, and I'll never forget. Well, I'll go back, but my trip to Notre Dame, there was a girl I dated at Mount Vernon. Well, we kind of dated, but I had this crush on her. Her name was Kathy D'Amico. She's a great girl. She was a cheerleader. She was a year ahead of me at Mount Vernon, graduated. She didn't go to Notre Dame. And then Tommy Gibbons was a guy that was a Notre Dame tri-captain. He was a safety. He went to Fort Hunt.
Mm.
So he was a senior at Notre Dame in 1979. He had come over to my house a couple of times to try to recruit me for Notre Dame when he was home for the summer. So I knew Tommy. Of course, I knew Kathy. So I land in South Bend, Indiana. I had never been on a plane before in my life until I flew to North Carolina. So I fly to Chicago, switch planes, fly to South Bend, and Coach Smith meets me at the gate with Kathy D'Amico and Tom Gibbons. And so I spend the whole weekend with them. I go do the basketball game that Saturday at the back then it was the Athletic and Convocation Center, known as the ACC. Digger Phelps was the head coach at Notre Dame. Lefty Drizel was at Maryland, and Maryland was playing at Notre Dame. And I was a Maryland basketball fan. I used to go over there when they were recruiting me with Coach Claiborne, and I'd go to the games with Ralph Larry and Mike Tice and John Tice. They had Albert King, if you remember back in the day,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
So went to the basketball game that evening or that afternoon after the game. I go to Coach Devine's, office in his desk. It's like something out of every time I watch the movie Rudy, I think of it because there's Coach Devine at his desk, and here I am. I'm sitting at Notre Dame by myself. My parents don't make the trip, and he talks about me and he pushes scholarship papers forward for a full ride to the University of Notre Dame, and he pushes a phone towards me and he goes, "Call your parents and tell them you're coming to Notre Dame." And I was like, I'm not ready to make that decision yet, sir. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on an 18-year-old kid, you know.
Yeah. But
So
we were all kind of Notre Dame fans because when we were kids, we had to watch Lindsey Nielsen and Notre Dame highlights every Sunday morning. So
this is Liz and
you
Nelson
got
along with Paul Horning, and after exchanging punts, it's Notre Dame football at the 35-yard
yeah.
line. Yeah,
And then we moved to
right.
later. We moved to later on in the game. You know, we all grew up Notre Dame fans because that was really the only football there was on TV on Sunday mornings. So
That's
I'm sure that
correct.
was a lot.
Oh yeah, and of course, half my family, my mom's side of the family, my grandmother is Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
So there was that draw. Not I'm not Catholic, but there's that draw that oh, you need to go play for Notre Dame. And, it's one of those, and it's. But the week before, I go I go to Clemson and go out that night, and then the next day I do the tour of the facilities and meet with Coach Ford and meet with Coach Wilhelm, the baseball coach, and blah blah blah. And then that night, my host was a guy named Rex Varn, who was an All ACC defensive back at Clemson. He was from Martinsville, Virginia, and Rex goes, he goes, hey man, he goes, I'm taking you to a pajama party tonight. I go, well, I don't have any pajamas. He goes, well, don't worry, just wear your regular stuff and you'll fit in fine. I go, okay. So he picks me up at the little Holiday Inn in Clemson, which was the only hotel at that time in Clemson. And we go to this party, and it's the typical college kind of townhouse thing where it's a circular drive. We pull in, and he goes, "Go up and knock on the door." And it was like a scene out of Animal House, music stomping, there's beer cans flying out. So I go up, I knock on the door. The door opens. It's Steve Fuller and Dwight Clark. They're standing there with pajama bottoms, shirtless, with cowboy hats on. They go, Billy, where you been? We've been waiting on you. And I'm like, that would be like having Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne meet you at the door. Modern day, it's like as a high school kid, you're like, oh my God, it's Steve Fuller. Steve Fuller was a first round draft pick for the Chiefs, ended up playing on the Bears '85 team. And
Yeah.
of course, everyone knows who Dwight Clark is.
Yeah.
And yeah, they sat me down on the couch with a co-ed on either side and said, hey, here's a couple of beers, enjoy yourself. If you need anything, just let us know. We'll take care of it. And I'm like,
Where do I sign
that
up? Yeah.
but I mean, to this day, I tell that story. I go, Dwight, in 1987, we had a reunion, all the NFL players at Clemson, and we met with the recruits, and they introduced us at halftime of the basketball game in Little John Coliseum. And so they introduced, it was done alphabetically. So Dwight Clark, number 87 of the San Francisco 49ers, Dwight, place goes crazy, right? Who's next in line? Billy Davis.
That's right. That's a tough. You
So
chose you chose Clemson though. Was that did it feel real Southern to you going to Clemson?
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And I'm a Southern kid by heart, just one of those, you know. I love to hunt and fish. It's right on Lake Hartwell. It's just a really laid back atmosphere. But I tell you, if you've never been there, especially for a football game weekend, you just gotta go. I mean, and it's gotten even better. Now, Dabo Sweeney is a dear friend of mine. I've known Dabo since 2003. I could probably get him to do a Zoom call with you, and then you really have something. You wouldn't
Yeah.
have just me, but you'd
Yeah.
have Coach Sweeney, because I
That'd
just
be
texted him yesterday.
a
He,
nice guy.
like our daughter graduated from Kentucky. He called her because he's known her since she was 2 years old.
Mhm.
As soon as she graduated, he called her, says, hey, I want you to come work for me. You
Mhm.
work for me, you'll be set for the next 20 years. So she worked in sports information and media relations for Coach Sweeney in his office, basically the entire 2024-2025 season. So she got an Atlantic Coast Conference championship ring out of that. So she has an SEC championship ring from 2021 and an ACC championship ring from 2024. And she's like, Daddy, I'm catching you. I go, well, you're getting close.
Well, that's the whole. But so you go to Clemson, and this is back in. I mean, kids red shirt. It takes a while to get used to playing on the big stage. You're on the field right away,
Yeah,
and
unfortunately.
you're returning kicks.
Yeah.
That must have been a huge adjustment right away. Freshman, a true freshman, you're on the field at Clemson.
Excellent point, Julian. As a matter of fact, I was having a discussion with this a couple of guys in the gym just a couple of days ago. And a couple of my friends played, like Billy Hamilton played basketball at UNC Wilmington. And we were talking. Dude, the jump from Mount Vernon High School to Clemson, as opposed to the jump from Clemson to the NFL, it's huge. I said because it's you're going, in high school you might play against one guy or two guys that might play Division One. To now everybody is all state or an all American at Clemson, and then you're like on our national championship team in 1981. To include myself, we had 23 guys play in the NFL.
Mm,
And so from Jeff Davis to Jeff Bryant to William Perry, the fridge, my locker was right next to William for 3 years. I was locker number 91
mm,
and Freaky P was locker number 92
mhm.
for 3 years. So when you practice and play with those guys, then the jump to the next level is not nearly as shocking. And I went to Clemson. I was 6'4", a buck 82 max. I was rail thin, but we went 6-5 that year. I showed up. Hey, second game of the year, I'm returning punts against the University of Georgia in Athens. And you go from playing in front of 1,000 people at Edison High School to playing in front of 85,000 in Athens, Georgia. It, yeah, I mean it's the shock is just some and but Coach Ford and what coaches do, and I firmly believe, and I know you'll agree, coaches play the people they trust.
Mm.
And coach trusted me to be back there. I wish I could have redshirted that year because really all I did, they moved me back and forth between playing wide receiver and safety because they didn't know where they wanted me. I played a little bit of both, return punts. But I wish I back then, as freshmen, you weren't automatically redshirted. The only way they could redshirt you is if you got hurt. They just couldn't. Now they can automatically just redshirt somebody, but back then they couldn't.
Well,
So I think,
I think some schools kind of played faster than
yeah, we probably could have, but I guess I was just valuable enough. Like I was the backup free safety for like 3 games at the end of the year.
we.
And we went 6-5. We beat South Carolina. The first game we ever wore orange pants. They had George Rogers,
Those
who
riders.
won the Heisman Trophy that year. And then the next year we ended up winning the whole thing. And it was
So,
just a magical mystery tour.
how do you explain Danny Ford was a prodigy? How did you explain a 32-year-old coach win a national championship? I mean, how did you get to be such a good coach so quickly and be able to build such a great team?
Bear Bryant, he played for Coach Bryant.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's your answer. I mean, if you look at Coach Bryant's coaching tree and the things he did, and there's this movie out. If you ever have a chance to watch it, I think you can watch it even on YouTube or Netflix. It's called The Junction Boys,
Hmm.
and it's a story of Bear Bryant. Coach Bryant was the head. He was at Maryland at one time, and then he went from Maryland to Kentucky, and then he went from Kentucky to Texas A&M. And it's a story of his first year at Texas A&M, and he ran off like 60% of the team. They went to this place called Junction, Texas.
Hmm.
He had 2 days and it was brutal. And we watched that movie. I think it came out in 82 or 83. And it was like watching one of our practices. It
It was
was
really tough.
just
He was a very tough coach.
tough. Yeah, hard nosed. You could tell he cared a lot about his players, but absolutely no nonsense. Like Coach Ford right now, I don't think he'd last in this environment.
Was
I
he a
don't think.
manager of his coaches, or was he actually coaching you
Oh,
in
he's
practice?
coaching you. He would hold for extra points and field goals. He was an offensive minded coach, like most coaches are. You're either a defensive coach or an offensive coach. He spent most of his time with the offense, especially with the offensive line, because that's what he played at Alabama. So I think he was an offensive lineman, which means he's going to have a hard nosed offensive line. And back in those days, if we threw the ball 15, 20 times a game, that was airing it out, you know, because most of the teams we played, like Georgia, of course, they had Herschel Walker. So was toss sweep right, toss sweep left, ISO. So when you went to play a football game, you better have your chin strap buckled, your mouthpiece in,
Hmm.
because uh, then you run into problems if you play a team like Duke with Ben Bennett and Red Wilson, and they threw the ball all over the place, which we weren't. Now everybody throws the football, and it's a whole different world.
Well, let's go to your sophomore year, the year you won the national championship.
Yep.
Um, You guys weren't on anyone's radar. You weren't rated preseason, but then
Nope.
you beat UNC and Kellen Bryant, and that kind of put you guys on the map. That's when people started looking at you guys as a contender. Is that right?
Well, we opened up with unranked on nobody's radar because we were 6-5. We could have easily been 5-6 or worse. But but we had everybody coming back. We didn't lose anybody that was a contributor. And so we opened up with Wofford. We were supposed to play Villanova, but in that spring, Villanova dropped football.
Hmm.
Okay. So we scrambled and ended up getting Wofford on the schedule, beat them 45-10. Then we went down and played Tulane in the Superdome, beat them like 13 to, I don't know what it was. It was a close game. Then we played Georgia in Clemson. We had lost to Georgia the year before 20-16 in Athens, and they beat us on a 67-yard punt return by Scott Warner, and he also had a 99-yard interception return. Those two plays killed us. So the next year, we have the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs in Clemson. We ended up beating them 13-3. We had Georgia had 9 turnovers, 4 fumbles, and 5 interceptions. I had one of them. It was my first collegiate interception. That's what got us on the radar. We beat Georgia. I think we ended up being ranked like 18th, and that's back when we only had 20 teams. It wasn't 25,
Yeah.
top 20. That was it. And then we just slowly chipped away through our ACC schedule. But you're right. Then it was the first. That was the first meeting at Carolina in Chapel Hill between two top 10 ranked ACC football teams in history. If somebody believe that, but we were like fourth, and they were I don't know eighth, and they had Scott Stankavage and Kelvin Bryant and those guys. We beat them 10-8, and then that got us. Then we beat Maryland for the ACC championship in Clemson 17-7, and we played South Carolina down in Columbia, beat them 29-13. I can remember these scores. I know it's crazy.
Mhm.
And then, so we were ranked second in the country, came home for Thanksgiving, and Penn State beat number one Pittsburgh and Dan Marino. That vaulted us to number one. And then we were matched up with the Nebraska, who was ranked number 4 in the
The
Orange.
Orange Bowl, they had to take the Big Eight winner and then the best available team.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's right.
So that's how
Exactly
you
right.
got to the Orange Bowl.
Yep.
And
And
that was in Nebraska with Turner Gill, who did not play against you guys,
he did
but
not.
but but,
Nope.
but Roger Craig.
Roger Craig,
What's
Irving
like
Fryer,
Irvin Fryer? That's right.
Irving Fryer. Oh yeah, yeah,
What was
yeah.
it like to tackle Roger Craig?
I didn't have to tackle him. I didn't. And thankfully, he was. Who's the other back they had too? They had Irving Fryer, Roger Craig. Yeah, Turner didn't play. They had Mark Maurer. They had Dave Remington, who's a two-time Outland Trophy winner.
That's right. Yeah.
They were favorites. They were like a 4-point favorite. We were the underdog.
Yeah.
But
They had lost their first two games of the year or something
yes,
like that. First two of the
they were.
first three. And
Yeah,
then they went on a roll and then they won
yeah,
the rest. They won out.
yeah. They were loaded. It was just and they did underestimate us. There's no they. We would go to team functions the week prior because we went down. We traveled down. I left Mount Vernon on December 18th of 1981. Flew to Daytona Beach, and then got a cab and went down to New Smyrna Beach. And we spent a week in New Smyrna with 2-a-days. We did 2-a-day practices for a week.
My daughter loves it there.
Yeah, New Smyrna is nice. And then we bus down on Christmas Day from New Smyrna down to Miami. And then we'd have functions at night with Nebraska, and they would laugh at us and make fun of us and point at us. And we were just like, all right, all right, that's cool. We got, because we had some stone cold bad dudes at Clemson. I'm telling you, man, they were, like I said, guys like Jeff Davis, who bench pressed 515 pounds. Jeff Bryant, even back in 1981, 6'6", 275. He played like 12 years for the Seahawks, defensive end.
Your quarterback was
William
stud.
Perry,
Your quarterback was stud. Homer.
Homer Jordan. Oh, yeah, Homer. He was great. I mean, we had Chuck McSwain. Our running backs were Cliff Austin, who played in the NFL,
Mhm.
Chuck McSwain, who played in the NFL, Kevin Mack, who was an all pro. he was one of our fullbacks. Perry Tuttle, first round draft pick by the Bills. You go right down the list.
Mm.
And then on the defense, we were there were Dan Benish played in the NFL. I did. Uh, Rod McSwain played on for the Patriots. He was a cornerback. He played on their Super Bowl team in '85. You go boom, 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 right down the list, just loaded. Dale Hatcher was our punter. He was an All Pro.
Yeah.
Donald Igwe was our kicker.
Yeah.
He played in the NFL. Yeah, so they underestimated us, but they didn't realize our talent level.
Well, you guys led most of the game, but then there came a moment you had a punt return that really helped you guys put the game away.
Yeah, it's it's funny even to this day. It, how many years ago was that now? 44 years ago. I do a lot of speaking in especially for Clemson. I speak to the football team. I was supposed to speak to the baseball team last week, but work got in the way. And I spoke to the Fort Hill Clemson Club, which is the Clemson club for the Clemson area last August. And I told the story of going to the 2010 Meineke Car Care Bowl in Charlotte. Clemson was struggling. They were 6-6 and they were playing South Florida. So me being a friend of Dabo and a big supporter, I felt it was important for me to go to this game and be on the sidelines to be visible. So the night before, the IPTE, which is our scholarship fundraising organization, had a big get together. And one of the guys who worked for IPTE drove up from Clemson that day, and he pulled me aside. And his son was like 9, and he goes, "Hey, we watched the Orange Bowl on the way up on DVD." And he goes, "He really like to meet you." And I'm like, "Cool." So I can't remember the kid's name. His name, Jimmy. And so I walk over and I get down on one knee and I look at Jimmy and I go, "Hey Jimmy, how you doing?" Billy Davis. He goes, "If you'd stay to the outside, you just scored a touchdown."
Yeah.
And I go, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've only heard that a few times." But yeah, I guess I was going down and I broke left instead of right. And as you know, as a player, it's vision and colors. And when you're moving and going that fast, it's you either got to go right or left. I went left, and actually Irving Fryer came and I cut this way and he hit me. And I was playing with a cracked sternum.
Jeez.
I played half the year with a cracked sternum, which no one, I mean, you have broken ribs and cracked sternums and broken fingers and concussions. And because they just hit you and you go, right? But he hit me right here. They basically had to drag me off the field. But yes, I think that really put the dagger in them. They came back and scored a touchdown and went for 2 and got it. But um, that's when we kind of knew we might have a shot to pull this thing off. And that was the first national championship in Clemson history in any sport.
Yeah. Do you think it feels the same then? Some years there was finality. The obviously top-rated team won their bowl game. Nowadays, it's a tournament, just like you'd have at a high school football or
Yeah.
pro football. Do you like the way it was back then, where you had a bowl game and then you win your matchup, and if you got the votes, you won. If not, maybe you didn't win.
But you know what? I don't mean to be a politician and try to take, stride both sides of the fence, but I think there's good and bad in both. Um, what I do, and you probably remember, like the Orange Bowl, that was the game. I mean, they had a big halftime show, and my folks, when I was a little kid, used to let me wait up just to watch the Orange Bowl. And it was always on New Year's Day.
Yeah,
You woke up, right, and you had the Cotton Bowl on, and then you had the Rose Bowl from Pasadena, and it was all on one day, and it was like this big,
yeah. The
boom.
Sugar Bowl was on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, but it was yeah, exactly. But it was like this penultimate college football. This is going to decide it all because we went in the locker room before the game. I think this is probably what you're getting to. And I'd grown up a huge college football fan, a huge NFL fan, and now I'm living the dream. It's all I've ever wanted to do, right? So we go out and warm up, and it's hot. It's Miami hot in January. It's like 83 degrees, and the sun's down, right? And it's humid, and we warm up soaking wet. We come off, and Coach Hallman was our secondary coach. He goes, "Boys, slow it down, boys. We're not running the race right now. We're running the race in another half an hour. Slow it down, slow it down, slow it down." Because you're all, your adrenaline's running so high because the stadium's already packed. It's the Orange Bowl. You watch Super Bowls in the stadium. You watch Orange Bowls forever. The stadium doesn't even exist anymore. But we go back in the locker room, and the Rose Bowl was running over. They were behind schedule. So Coach Ford said, take your shoulder pads and your jerseys off and we took our pads off and just sat, and the TV monitors in the locker room, it would show the Rose Bowl with a view and then it would cut to the Orange Bowl and it had the blimp. And it would show the Orange Bowl all over. It would say, next, the game for the national championship, Nebraska and Clemson coming to you on NBC. And you're like going, you know, and they're showing it and you're living it. You're right in the middle.
That's so cool.
Just crazy as a fan that had now is living the dream of it's just it's one of those surreal moments I'll never forget of showing the Rose Bowl, showing the Orange Bowl, view from the blimp, and saying the game for the national championship because it essentially was whoever won that game was going to be crowned the
You
national.
think Nebraska would have been crowned
Yeah.
champion? Yeah.
Mhm.
So the uh, the next year, you lose your first game to Georgia.
Yep.
Was that a big letdown? Were you guys already on probation at that point, or was that
No,
later on?
no,
Oh,
there were rumors going around that it was coming.
got it.
Um, and I could cut that off. I can say that Clemson, other than Coach Ford probably being in my house more times than he was supposed to be, I never got one illegal inducement, not one thing from Clemson.
Nowadays,
No,
it'd been legal anyways. Nobody cares.
exactly. But it's and people are like, oh, they gave you a car. I said, no, I no. Other guys did have cars. Yeah. My parents, I had a bike that I rode around campus.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, Julian, you probably know, I was the number one recruit in the state of Virginia my senior year. I was number one. Ricky Hunley was number two. Sean Gale was number three.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it wasn't like they couldn't have offered me anything.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we started off. That was a big game we played on Labor Day, Monday night football at 8 o'clock. It was the 1980 national champion versus the 1981 national champion in Athens, Georgia. Clemson is 72 miles from Athens.
Hmm.
It's right down the road.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real close. I mean, Clemson is you're 20 minutes, you're into Georgia.
Hmm.
So you're 2 hours north of Atlanta. So a lot of like Homer, our quarterback was from Athens.
Hmm.
He's from Athens. Probably 40% of our team was from the state of Georgia. So it was always a big deal when we played Georgia. So yeah, we lost to them. Then we this
You
Boston
tied Boston College. So
yeah.
what was like playing against Doug Flutie?
Well, I was about to say we didn't know who Boston College was. We were like Boston. Honestly, we were like they had actually come in early and they went up to the top of the hill and had a team picture by Howard's Rock. And we were kind of laughing at them, kind of like Nebraska laughed at us, right?
And
Like these guys
You didn't know who Doug Flutie was?
had no clue. Now he was a sophomore. So we figured out who he was real quick though. We started playing him. So I played a lot in that game and he was all over the field. I mean, he was just like a little gnat. And they tied us 17-17, or we tied them. And then the next week we played Western Carolina in Clemson and they were beating us at the half 10-9. And we ran off the field in the locker. We got booed. They were booming at us.
Mhm.
Clemson fans were booing us, and rightfully so because we were stinking up the place. We ended up pulling that off, and then the next week we played Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. You might have the schedule right in front of you, and that was the NCAA was sniffing around, and our athletic director and university president suspended Homer Jordan for the week because for illegal, he was driving a car that he couldn't explain how he had the car. So my roommate, Mike Epley, ended up starting at quarterback. I had two interceptions in that game against Kentucky, ironically enough. My daughter ended up going there. And then the next week we played UVA at Virginia. And back then the only team captains were seniors, right?
Mhm.
So uh, if you were a senior, you were a team captain. No ifs, ands, or buts. And at the end of the year, voted to who was going to be the captain. So I walked and they always announce the captains on Thursday, and you found out who the captains were when you walked into the athletic center, the football area where our hallway was, where our locker rooms, and the pictures were up. It was Julian Brown offense, Terry Kennard defense, whoever it was. Walked in down the hallway, and I looked, and the special teams captain was Billy Davis.
Oh, cool.
And everybody was like, dude, how did you pull that? Well, I had a really good. I was always a good kid. Plus, I was going home to Virginia, and Coach Ford decided he was going to make me a team captain. So that's another one of my favorite memories of walking onto that field with Charlottesville, the Tiger Band playing for the coin toss. My grandmother was there. Grandfather was there. It was a big deal. We ended up beating them like 48 to nothing. They were.
I was there. That was the first. No, no, I think it was the year before. I got the UVA fall of '84.
Oh, so you went to UVA? I did
Yeah,
not know.
but so I
No.
got
Okay.
that'd have been a year before. So how come you won out? You won the rest of your games, but you didn't go to a bowl game. How come?
Because well, the deal was we got put on probation, and the NCAA said, yeah, we were going to go back to the Orange Bowl again. We were 9-1-1 ACC champions. As a matter of fact, that's my favorite play at Clemson in football. Was we're playing in College Park at Maryland. It scores 24-22. Maryland's driving. They have a dude by the name of Boomer Esiason as their quarterback, right? And so Terry Kennard, who I backed up for 3 years, but Terry was a Sports Illustrated All Century team, CBS Defensive Player of the Year, first round draft pick. But I got my shots in. And so Terry got hurt his third and 10. And I run in, Boomer drops back to pass, throws the ball over the middle. I intercept it. Game's over. We run out the clock and we win the ACC championship 24-22.
But you couldn't go. But you couldn't go to the.
No, we played South Carolina and then we played Wake Forest in Tokyo the Thanksgiving week.
Oh,
That there was a thing called back then, it was called the Mitsubishi Mirage Bowl. And
cool.
so since we were the national champions the year before, they wanted us to come and play in Tokyo. So we always kind of got along with Wake Forest. So we invited Wake Forest to come over with us. So we flew the both teams flew on a 747 to Tokyo. We played in Tokyo,
Was it
and
regular?
then
Was it a regular season game?
yeah, it was a regular season game. Yep. And then it counted as a regular season game. And then the NCAA and the ACC said if you take this year of probation now and don't go to a bowl game, then you'll be on probation 84 to 85. You'll be back off of it on 86.
Right.
Oh, excuse me, 84. So they were back off of probation 85. So they did my senior year, which was horrible. We went 9-1-1, 6-0 in the ACC, but we were ineligible for the ACC championship, could not play on television, and could not play in a bowl game.
So interesting because you had the same two teams gave you trouble. You lost to Boston College this time instead of tied them, and then
Correct?
you tied Georgia, and instead of lost to them.
Yep.
So
Yep.
was Flutie even better that year?
Yep. Yeah. Well, we were winning at halftime. And they had a guy by the name of Troy Stratford who played in the NFL.
Hmm.
Um, Another guy, God, what was the wide receiver? Kevin Brennan, who
Mm-mm.
played a little bit in the NFL. But Flutie he was almost unstoppable.
He was a
So
great
he,
player.
second half, yeah, he was a great player. And he won the Heisman Trophy the next year. So, but the Georgia game was really interesting because Georgia was driving to tie the game. And I came up on a force on a toss sweep, hit their running back head on. It wasn't Herschel, it was another back because Herschel was already in the USFL at the time. I got knocked out. So I don't remember the end of the game. They kicked the field goal to tie it 16-16. We drove down the field. We attempted with like 5 seconds left, it's like a 69-yard field goal. It fell short. Then they had Kevin Butler, who played for the Bears. He marches on and tries like the other way to fall short. And the game ended on two missed field goals falling
Wow.
short in the end zone. And there
Wow.
was obviously back then there was no overtime.
Yeah. Did it feel?
Right.
Did it feel kind of? Did the games mean as much since you're on probation, or did they feel kind of empty?
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. No, we played our tails off
Right.
because we played, obviously we weren't getting paid. And so that's different, man. It's just we played for our teammates, we played for our coaches, we played for our parents,
Mm,
and we played for our school.
mm,
And I don't know if that's really the case too much now with this whole NIL pay for play thing.
yeah.
I mean, it's not, it's like the NFL. I mean, I would have played for the Dallas Cowboys if the Dallas Cowboys paid me, right?
Exactly.
Because that's your job.
Yeah,
Even though I grew up detesting the Cowboys because I was a Redskin fan. But if Coach Landry had called me and said, "Hey, we want you to wear the star," I said, "I'll be right there,
yeah,
no problem."
yeah.
And I think now, sometimes I think that's what's happened in college athletics is there's like I know at Clemson this past year they had a problem in the locker room.
Mm.
There was
Half the
dissension,
half the player
loyalty.
half the players would have transferred if you're on probation back when you played.
Oh, gone.
They would
And we
have
wouldn't have a team.
you would have a team that they would have gone. They would have made more money. When you look back on your career, you had a great career. You were on the field every single game of your career. Never took a red shirt. Uh,
No,
do you envy what the players have today with the money, with the freedom, with the social media, or do you like it the way it was when you played?
I like the way it was because I'm 64 years old. How old are you? About 60? You're
60. Yeah.
4? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm old school. Now, everything that happened back in the past is not good. There are a lot of things we could change as a country and as a society. But the way college athletics were back then, even though there was everybody was still cheating and this was going on and that was going on. But I mean, it's there. There's a lot to be said for a more simpler time, and you know the coaches. I mean, I know Coach Sweeney makes like $11 million a year. I mean, and you go to the parking lot at Clemson football. I mean, there are Lamborghinis and Mercedes and you name it. The guys are making. I mean, Cade Klubnik made I don't know a couple $1 million last year, and he was mediocre at best.
Yeah.
And
I,
so
I have
I
a
don't.
friend. I have a friend. Everyone's upset because Hubert Davis got fired from UNC. I grew up. My our fathers,
Yeah,
our
sure.
fathers, our fathers are friends. Everyone's upset. I'm
He
like,
went to Braddock, right?
he went to Lake Braddock.
Yeah,
Like he got a $5.3 million severance clause.
I
I
can't feel
mean,
too bad for him.
I love, yeah, I love Hubert, but
I,
he's doing a lot better. He's doing a lot better than I am right now. I'm still
I
working.
tell you one thing, I'm
Yeah,
not making $5.3 million working for Samaritan's Purse. I can promise you.
I'll be
But
working. Yeah,
no, I tell you how old I am. I remember when they built Lake Braddock and Robinson.
that's
There
right.
was no Lake Braddock and Robinson when I was growing up. It was everybody went to West Springfield or Lee or Hayfield.
That's right. That's right. Fairfax was built, but I think I was mostly city kids. I think I was mostly
Yeah,
Fairfax city
yeah,
kids.
Fairfax. Yeah, you're
Oh
right.
yeah.
It was but a lot of kids
And
went
then
to.
Woodson was built in '64
Yeah, it was older.
because because Red was the first coach there.
Yeah, the
Um,
thing about Coach Jenkins is that I know that he and Coach McCool, I'm sure they butted heads, just like Charlie Thompson at Lee. I
everyone
know
but
he had,
heads. Everyone but heads of Coach McCool.
yeah, he was that kind of guy.
He was trying to
Uh,
win. Yeah,
oh well, you
he
know
he was
what?
taking no
That's
prisoners. Yeah,
the problem, it seemed like probation has followed me around because my senior year in basketball at Mount Vernon,
that's right.
yeah, they they slapped us bad because we had two guys, Danny Buford and what was Timmy's name? I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, they had an address in Alexandria and an address in Mount Vernon. And I think they're either dad or mom or vice versa, either way.
Oh,
And so, but they were going to Mount Vernon, and we were number one in the district, and we had a really good, we had Derek and me, and um, we weren't quite as good as the state championship team, but we were pretty doggone good. And we ended up having to forfeit, I think, all of our games pre-January. So instead of going first, we ended up being like last in the district, and then we ended up losing the district championship
yeah.
because we had to forfeit half. I was bad back then. I mean, the Lee fans, they would come to Mount Vernon and they wore buttons, and it actually said F blank 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 Mount Vernon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it was
funny,
it.
but those things still happen today. They still there's still controversy about boundaries and double residencies. That has not changed
No, I'm
in
sure it
Fairfax.
hasn't.
It's still like that today. I remember when I played freshman basketball, and I played against Hammond, and they had 2 point guards on the team. They had Glenn Williams and Frank Smith. Both of
Wow.
both of them won state championships as quarterback. Frankie at Mount Vernon and Glenn at TC Williams. Uh,
I
but
didn't know Frank went to Hammond originally. I did not know that.
Yeah, I played against Frank and Glenn.
Well,
Uh,
I played against my sophomore year when I was playing JV. I played against Hammond. I dropped 29 against Hammond, and their point guard was Derek Steele
yeah,
because
that's
Derek played at Hammond too. Derek didn't go to Mount Vernon until his junior year.
now that's pretty
So,
that's pretty typical of Mount Vernon success when I was there. They had kids
yeah,
that they had kids that would show up that were there's so many. cases of kids that all of a sudden had Mount Vernon addresses.
Yeah.
But you know what? They were taken care of there. It was a great program, and that's just the way it was.
No, hey, that's true.
Yeah,
But another thing too is it's like with Coach Henry being at Robinson, and we're such a transient area that people research it. I mean, your dad's in the army and you're a good football, basketball player. Your dad's going to go, let's go. Do you want to live in the Robinson School District? Do you want
yeah.
to live in the Mount Vernon? I mean, that's what
And
I'm
that's
sure they
still
still do.
that's still legal. But now what they're trying to cut back on is people moving within the area. So now,
Oh, well,
if you're,
it's out here in Loudon County because we live outside of Lovettsville.
oh, do you?
Do you
Okay,
know?
I live in Lansdowne, so I'm nearby.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. All right, yeah, sure. I mean,
Lovettsville's that's beautiful there. Yeah.
I go to the Wegmans all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay. And
yeah.
but no, we live out about 3 miles outside of town. So our local high school is Woodgrove High School.
Oh, it's a great place. I go there. I go there all the time. I like to
Oh,
watch
do you?
basketball. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
football.
yeah,
They have a
Woodgrove.
great football. They have a great football coach, Derek
Yeah,
Barlow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now
Oh
Woodgrove's our local high school. Our oldest daughter graduated from Woodgrove, and then Loudon Valley's in Percival, and then Loudon County is in. They have the same issues because a lot of the kids want to go to Stonebridge
yeah.
in Ashburn,
Well, you can do
right?
that as long as you provide your own transportation. You can do it in Loudon.
Yeah.
They may change that coming up because
Well,
it's
that's like us. We live in Lovettsville, and our daughter went to the Madeira school, so we would make that drive every day into McLean, and then she swam for Nation's Capital Swim Club based in Tyson's. So I would drive from Lovettsville to McLean, drop her off.
I love my kids, but I'm gonna give them a list of public schools for high school and college, and those are your choice. But my oldest daughter, my middle child, wanted to go to Penn State. It's
Yeah.
$65,000 a year. JMU is 25,000. Love you,
Oh, makes
love you.
yeah, I know. I tell people, I said, you know what? Unless your kid's an athlete or like a cheerleader or in the band
Right.
but if you're just going there just because it's a great football school on a Saturday for I go, no, you can get a great education in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You don't have to go to,
We're so
you know,
lucky. We pay taxes for it, but we're so
well,
lucky.
you
Yeah.
get what you pay for, as my mom would say.
Well,
You
Billy,
do.
this has been great. I want to thank Julian Flores for setting this up. I gotta run for a three, but it's so nice
Yes,
meeting
sir.
you. I watched. I was at those games at Robinson when you guys played. I don't know. I'm trying to think of. I was at the football game when you played Robinson your senior year. I should have been there too. I don't think I was there. My guess I would. If you guys played at Robinson, I would have been there
Yep.
78 and 79. I'd been there.
We played Robinson in 78 and we won. I returned two punts for
I was
touchdowns.
there for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
it's
An
good.
interception.
Well, it's
Anyway,
nice to meet you in person, and
thanks.
congratulations on an amazing career. I wish, I was an athlete, but I couldn't even get on an all district team or even start every
God's
game.
blessed. You
So,
know
so,
what?
yeah.
It's one of the it's cool. But I could say we could do this. We could talk a lot more, obviously, because we know a lot of the same people
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
have a lot of the same experiences. But if you ever want me back on again,
yeah,
just
absolutely.
just give me a call. We can
I
talk
sure
about
will.
other
I sure
things.
will, Billy. And look, enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate you doing this, and thanks again to Julian.
Thanks, Julian.
Okay,
Appreciate it,
Bill.
man.
Good talking to you,
All
buddy.
right, bye.
All right, yeah, take care.